Today's podcast is brought to you by StrongHeartAcademy.com, where no heart is no victory. We are also brought to you by BJJ To Go. If you want to build your game and learn jiu-jitsu, go to bjjtogo.com. Okay, I've been out for a while. Just busy. I have a few things I can talk about, so I thought I'd do some podcasts. I just finished, today I'm going to talk about The Wheel of Time. I've been reading this thing. I thought it was longer than it was, actually. I think it's about a year and a half, maybe. I thought it was 2.5 years, but I read this other series before that. When the pandemic happened, I just needed something light to read. Like, I was reading The Long Walk Home. It was the Nelson Mandela story, and it was just heavy stuff. It's like 900 pages, super heavy. He's being imprisoned, and I was literally at the point where he's going to prison. It was just like terrible. And then the pandemic hit, and then, it just rocked the whole world, really, between government reach, economic woes. I mean, it was affected my business terribly. I didn't know what was going to happen. I just needed something at night to chill out and read and kind of take my mind off things. Because also at the time, they weren't doing any kind of filming because it was like really hard to film things because of the pandemic. People forget, like, even content is like slowly, even after 2 years, starting to come back at a decent rate. So I was just like running out. There was no sports for a while. The NBA kind of did it. It was just like, so as far as like you're done with work, you have a little bit of leisure time. What are you going to do for an hour at night, maybe 2 hours, depending on, I read it for about an hour to 2 hours, depending if I get into it or not. I just needed something different. So I started doing fantasy novels. I'd never really been into fantasy novels, but I'm like, this is nothing like reality. So I just felt like it was a good escapism for me. I just needed escapism that was not, destructive to myself. A lot of people just ate themselves to death and drank a ton, took pills and stuff. I didn't want to do any of that. I wanted to be positive. So I worked on mandolin and I read. I worked on mandolin, read, and hang out with my family, and that was it. And I'm glad I did. But then I got stuck on this book called Wheel of Time. And I asked, I think I did on Facebook, I said, hey, what's a good fantasy novel that I can get into? And someone just randomly put Chronicles of Amber, and the other one was like Wheel of Time. And I finished Chronicles of Amber, which is also a lot of books, but those were like 250 pages, maybe 300. It's not too bad. And I think there's like 9 or 10 of them. And I busted those ones out. But the Wheel of Time is a mofo. The Wheel of Time is 14 books. Let's see, I have it here. It's 14 books. It is 4,410,000 words. Over 4 million words. You read 4 million words. If you were to listen to the audio, it would take you 19 days and 5 hours to listen to the books. It's insane. These books are an average of like 800 to 1,200 pages a book. There's 14 freaking books. I'm not what you would call a fast reader. I have a bunch of learning disabilities. I have dyslexia. So, reading is not, I love it, but it's not always easy. And so this one was tricky. And I got into it. It was pretty cool. But it took a long time, man, to get through it. It's there's something like, I don't have that on me. It's crazy amount. There's like 2,000 characters, names. Okay, some of these characters also have horse names. The name of their horse. They have the place where they're from. The world is so laid out that it's almost against your imagination. Like, some books lead you to imagine what they were like. This dude, Robert Jordan, wrote so detailed. The main character walks in a room. He'll tell you what he's wearing, to boots, to breeches. They kept saying breeches instead of pants. Everything. Like his accent, They all have accents. They have full-on cultures in this book. There's all these different ethnicities and cultures and the way they do things, the way women act in certain countries, the way men act in certain countries. It's a crazy intense book. I do recommend it, but I like to finish things. So, I think a lot of people probably read this series and just never got to the end because it's such it's a lot. It's just a lot. It's easy to give up on it or whatever. I did like the books. I thought they were good. It was not too intense. People die in it for sure. Characters die. It starts off with these main characters in a small town. You don't know anything yet, and how would I describe it? I don't want to give too much away. Then they made a series on Amazon last year, and I did not like the series too much. They changed so much that it was like it could have been cooler than it was. And it's such a big thing. Like you could make, it's like Marvel movies. You could make these for like years. There's 14 books, so so much happens in these books. It's insane. Where the characters start and where they end up is they change so dramatically throughout the book. People lose arms and eyes and things like that. Like it's crazy. And so the premise kind of the book is the universe was created by a creator, and then he spun the wheel of time. So it's kind of like these mixes different philosophies, religious philosophies. So the wheel of time is kind of like Buddhism, almost a reincarnation, okay? And it spins people out, which they call threads, are people in the wheel of time. And these threads are people that live their lives. When you die, you get put in the wheel and you get spun back out in another time. The wheel keeps turning, so it's the cyclical nature of time. We have seasons, the time, years, things keep going. But in this, there's ages. So I think they're in the 4th or 7th age or something like that. And each age ends. So it's like apocalypse, basically. The world ends and then it's rebuilt back up. People forget past times. And the current age is almost like a medieval age, but they have no institutions of learning, really. They don't have any industrial sciences or production. People ride horses, but there's magical powers in the book. So also in the Wheel of Time, there's the true power, which is from the creator. And there's two halves of this power, almost like a male and female energy. And men can use one, females can use the other. Not everyone gets this. Certain people are born with it, and they call them channelers, where they can channel the power. And the magic system is like super complex and explains it fairly well. Or like if you watch a movie, it's like he's doing magic or say certain spells or whatever. Like this is crazy in-depth way of explaining how magic works in the book, and it makes it more believable, honestly, just because it's so in-depth of how to explain things, and certain people can do certain things, and then because it's like these ages end, they're rediscovering new discoveries of what the power can do. So people in this age are starting to rediscover certain magical powers that people used to be able to do no problem before, but they're only now just learning you can do. There's like ruins everywhere. So in this world that they're walking around in, they'll see ruins of like the last age. It's like every 3,000 years or something like that. The age happens and it destroys everything. And so you'll see these buildings that are crumbling, giant statues that no one knows. Like there's legends of what they are, but no one really knows. There's even like metal buildings where like we had technology and we don't even understand how that works. And they describe flying things and technologies that we don't have. They don't have access in the current world. It's just really interesting book, really well written. I thought there were 2 books that I would tell my wife, man, this is hard to get through. That were really not so slow, not much going on. I mean, they're setting things up for the other books, but it's like, man, they were so slow, and they were like 800 pages, like 1,600 pages of like the driest stuff, and it was hard to get to those. But I'm just like such a guy that likes to finish stuff that I was like, I gotta get through this. And then suddenly the writer ends up getting cancer in 2000s, and he wrote a bunch of notes, and he wrote, I think, one book with another writer, helped him. Then he wrote all the notes to finish the books, and this guy, he had like, I think, one more book, and the guy thought it was too much to tell in one book, so then he spins in 3 more books. And those last 3 books, I'll tell you what, were really good. Like the Sanders, what was his name? Something Sanders. Let me see here. I have my notes. Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson. Yeah, Brandon Sanderson, I really liked his writing. I almost liked it better than Robert Jordan. And Robert Jordan created the world, but the last 2 books were just really moved well. And they were long, but like I liked those books. They were really good. Now, the other thing with these books is like, you can't just jump in and go. And you would be so lost. So lost. You have to commit to reading this thing. The first 8 or 7 are good. I think it was like 8 and 9 weren't very good. I thought it was like, man, they're just too slow. And then they start speeding back up again. And then the last 3, the very last book is literally the last battle, like Apocalypse. It's just the end of the world. And it is really good. And it's the finality of certain characters, the fruition of certain things. In this world, there's these people that are like the Inquisitors, kind of, the children of the light, and they don't believe that people should use magic, and they kill and execute people, torture people. It's very realistic, and even like people know that it's like the end of the world in these different kingdoms. They still like fight with each other, and you would go, oh, we would all get on the same page. Not really. Like, it was very believable that like people would work against themselves, against others for their own interests, even though the whole world is on like the line. Like, people still looked after themselves first, and there's like kind of a duality of people. Like, yeah, they're good people, but they're still people. Like, they still think of themselves first, their people first, before other cultures. Certain cultures hated each other. They would fight wars with each other. And even though it's like, hey man, like the end's near, we all have to band together to get this thing done, to destroy. So there's also basically like the devil, and the creator created him and put him outside of the wheel. The wheel is basically our reality. Something happened where he kind of escaped. He can never really get into the wheel of time, but his influence moves into the wheel of time. It's basically like Satan. Then he has the chosen, which are these people that he promises that can lead. If he wins the last battle, he can reshape the universe in his own image, basically, and they'll be kind of like kings in this new world. And he gives them immense power, and then they use their power. They're actually in the wheel of time, and they're almost like demonic, but the regular people that he chooses, that he like influences into becoming what they are. And then there's like monsters and things that are made by them, that live in certain areas of the wheel of time. And so there's like the borderlands, and there's people that live in the blasted lands, and there's like the blight. The blight is like everything in the blight kills you, because it's like the evil from Satan Shaitan, I think his name is, prison like seeps out and makes everything around him bad. So it's a crazy book, but pause. I gotta pause and fix the camera. Technical difficulties. Okay, so I'm back. We'll see how long this is working here. Anyway, it was just a great book. I highly recommend it. It was just a lot. It was just a lot to go through. If you're into like quick stories, this is not the book for you. If you're into, less detail, this is not the book for you. This is so overly detailed. I mean, he would be like types of fighting style, like sword fighting, different sword fighting techniques. Like, you had to kind of like, I would look up horse terminology that I didn't understand. It was so, boats, there's names of boats, there's names of like, how to sail. Like, I don't know how to sail. So it was just really, really, really in depth. And I guess the original, and then the war is not, the way he describes it is interesting, because I guess he was a Vietnam veteran that wrote the books, and he was in combat. He's a combat veteran from Vietnam. I think he was a Marine. And so some people describe it as like really well written for that. He understands military tactics. They're talking about pincer movements. Like, it's I had to like I had looked these military tactics up. I was never in the military. I don't understand how to encircle an enemy and these things and trick them into things. But it was really, man, it was, I liked it. It was the very, very ending was so. The last book was really good. The last 20 pages where he just kind of wraps it all up was a little bit hurried a little bit. There was no cliffhangers really, I wouldn't say. Like, it's the end. But it was good. I mean, like, I don't know how you end something like that massive. It's always like all endings of any trilogy, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, like all these big, massive worlds, to end it is got to be, I mean, he must have stared at his like computer and like, I don't know, I'm assuming he typed on a computer. The first book was written in 1990. The last one was like 2013. So it took 23 years also to write this thing, which is insane. I never even heard about it until a while ago, and it's a huge following. Like, people love this thing. It's on these top book lists of like fantasy novels. Each one of them was a New York bestseller list, which I'm assuming under the category of fantasy. So, I mean, I don't know how many fantasy books are written a year. It can't be that many. I mean, I guess a lot, but I do recommend it. Again, you have to be into these kind of books, though. So if you're not into these kind of books, I wouldn't recommend it. Otherwise, if you're looking for something to just kind of get lost into, The Wheel of Time is it. The show is not like the books very much. I don't know what to tell you there, but I did watch the full series just because I wanted to get through it. And I'm a comic book nerd too, so like, the Marvel movies aren't exactly like comic books. Deadpool, one of my favorite comic books, is not like exactly like the movies, but I love those movies, so I just feel like they didn't do it well. So I'm not one of those people, you can't change the books. I just didn't think it was, there's certain aspects of the books were so cool that I'm like, why would you take that out? Like, that part is like central to the story of the books, so I don't understand why you would do that. I didn't even get into the female part of Wheel of Time and how they hunt males down and kill them, or what they call steal them, which is like take their powers from them if they have powers. There's all these different dynamics in the book, and then those people have warders, which are like badass bodyguards, basically. It's yeah, it's a cool book, man. Really cool book. So if you're into that, I recommend it. If you're not, don't get into it because it's gonna take you some time. I mean, I'm a black belt in jiu-jitsu. That took me a long time. So I'm into things that are hard, and it's gonna take a long time to get to a certain level. You know, for me, like, jiu-jitsu doesn't really end, but at least got to the black belt level, and I've been a black belt for 13 years or something like that. 14 years, a long time. So if you're into stuff like that, into a challenge, you like fantasy, I recommend reading it, but I don't recommend not reading all 14. That's the catcher. It's like jiu-jitsu, you know, like, people quit. I'm like, why would you quit when you don't even know anything yet? Like, that's so weird to me. Like, you're not even proficient at anything. Why would you quit? Like, that drives me crazy. So I'm just a person that, like, wants to finish something. And so once I started this sucker, I had to get through it. I'm glad it's done. I started reading some business books again. I used to read a lot of business books. So I'm back to that. Might go back to biographies. I got a Teddy Roosevelt book that's also a big sucker. But after reading these, I feel like that might be an easy one to just bust through, because these suckers were so big and so long. Wordy. And they're not like big text. It's like small text. The whole page is text, not giant margins, you know. I read books like that. I'm like, oh, I'm reading so much, but the text is so big. But I'd say it's worth it. I give it a 4 out of 5 stars. Again, those 2 books were terrible. You could just cut those suckers out, you know. Almost felt like he didn't have an editor, like a good editor. If he had a better editor, probably would have got these down to less books. But anyway, I recommend them. Peace out. Hope you like this pod. Wheel of Time. Go out and get it. Bye.
Let me talk for just a second, help me feel that sense of rhythm. Find the meanings in our bearings and discover this position as a stage along the way. Another rung to the ladder, either stalling or you're climbing, and I'd rather beat the ladder. Instead of getting fatter, let the footsteps resume naturally.